Now, we are going to debut a new segment for you that we will be, reoccurring for the next 3-4 weeks called New Faces in New Places, where we are going to evaluate two head coaches, or I should say I am going to evaluate two head coaches and tell you which one of them is most likely to succeed in year one, not over the length of their time, of their tenure as stewards of their respective college football programs, all right? So this is not a referendum on what Lincoln Riley's career will look like at USC, just what it will look like in 2022. The same is true for Brent Venables. So I'm clear here. The flavor text on this. RJ predicts how each coach will do in their first year with a new program. We have a lot to choose from, so we could make this, as we are, a reoccurring feature, kind of like what we're doing with the slept on, super slept on, and, obvious transfer candidates for most impactful transfer of 2022. All right. Now, let's start with Lincoln Riley. Year one, for me, it's about not just what you have on the roster, but what does your schedule look like? Because your schedule indicates just how hard it's going to be for you to win football games. I think it's interesting because of the two, that'd be USC and Oklahoma, I think SC has these weaker of the two schedules, which means that I would expect a little bit more from Lincoln Riley in year one. So on September 17th, you have Fresno State, which is interesting because they return Jake Haener, and Jeff Tedford is going to be back on the sidelines. I'm excited about this, right? Because we watched Caleb DeBoer ended up at Washington, and I think that Fresno State could have USC putting money in the bag. Now, I'm going to have to work hard to get that number because SC is a private school, which means that they don't have to disclose how much money they pay somebody to get, their behinds kicked if they, in fact, get their behinds kicked. But I'm going to effort that number because I think that this is a game that USC could lose because UCLA looked at Fresno State and was like, no, we got it. No, you didn't. You're going to get all of this Jake Haener. And it was an outstanding game. I remember watching that late into the night. It was a lot of fun. I was listening to it on Fresno State radio. Those dudes were losing their minds. Like they were going after the referees. They were going after the opposing coaching staff. They were going after Pac-12. They're going after everybody. Talking about they don't want us to win it. They don't want us to win. I love home radio. It's great. On October 15th, they have what I think is the most pivotal game on their schedule, which is Utah. In a year in which, Kyle Whittingham and the Utes are the defending Pac-12 champs, and everybody wants to act like they don't exist over there in Salt Lake City with the emergence of Lincoln Riley. I'm sure they want to show Lincoln what is really good in the Pac-12. And then, of course, they got Notre Dame on November 26th. We'll know a lot about Notre Dame before then, just like we'll know a lot about USC before then, but I'm really interested to see how Marcus Freeman and Tommy Rees take on Ohio State to open the season and what that means for them down the road. It's not as if they got a cakewalk, but it could be fun to watch Notre Dame versus USC in a game that matters. The last time I saw Notre Dame and USC in a game that matters, Notre Dame looked like she should have lost to SC and barely beat a 5-7 SC, and we put them in the college football playoff for that, and then everybody was absolutely, just miffed that Clemson destroyed Notre Dame in their college football playoff semifinal. Maybe we'll get something similar. I doubt it, but we could. So some star players you should know from USC: Caleb Williams, Jordan Addison, Corey Foreman. I could add more to that list, but I'm going to stop there because, well, it's transfer All-Americans over there in South Central. I think that if Caleb Williams plays well, they have an opportunity. Jordan Addison is Jordan Addison. They have an opportunity. Corey Foreman comes on in Alex Grinch's defense. They could be pretty doggone good. It's also about what the offensive line is going to be about. I realize that USC is returning a bunch of really outstanding and veteran offensive linemen. I also don't see any depth behind them if they get hurt. And fact of football, people get hurt on the offensive line. But yeah, people get hurt. I think all those things have to go into your thought process when you're evaluating Lincoln Riley in year one. And then recruits for you to know: cornerback Damani Jackson, running back Raleek Brown, safety Zion Branch. These are all outstanding 2022 gets for anybody, let alone SC. Raleek Brown is a star in the making. Like, you're going to hear his name quite a bit. You're probably going to hear it rhyme with freak because put the ball in that dude's hand and let him go. Damani Jackson, we know about that guy. outstanding corner and could be really the best player that Roy Manning has at corner in 2022. We'll see what Alex Grinch decides to do with that, adding other transfers like Bryson Shaw out of Ohio State to that back end alongside guys like Zion Branch, comes out of Bishop Gorman, outstanding safety, could be pretty doggone good. All right, before I give a record for what I think USC could do, both the low end and the high end, talk a little bit about Brent Venables. So Brent Venables is coming into year one at Oklahoma with an advantage that I haven't seen for, say, Lincoln Riley. The last time I saw this sort of advantage was Arkansas, Sam Pittman. When you have everybody in the state pulling in the same direction. Everybody wanted Sam Pittman to take that job. Everybody wanted Sam Pittman to succeed, and they were going to give him time to build the program out in the way that he wanted. And he will tell you, just like Barry Odom will tell you, just like Kendall Bryce will tell you, the state of Arkansas, the city of Fayetteville, Arkansas alumni have had so much to do with how they were able to be successful in 2021 because all they got was positive affirmation. They beat Texas and A&M in the same year, beat Penn State in the Outback Bowl, got 9 wins. That's outstanding. That's their best season in over a decade. Really great stuff. And I see that in what Brent Venables has because he also is the guy that chose to pick Oklahoma after it was spurned by its past partner. That would be Lincoln Riley. It's also a wild just win for Oklahoma because I didn't think that Brent Venables would ever leave Clemson because there'd been so many other jobs that popped up for which he was qualified that he just didn't want to take. Kansas State, where he went to college, played linebacker. That opened up. He didn't want that job, right? Auburn didn't want that job. There were a bunch of jobs that popped up that Brent Venables would have probably, I say the alumni there would have backed up a truck to get him there, and he said no. But when this job came open, Bob Stoops, right, Joe Castiglione, and OU's president, Joe Harris, decided to try to go get him, and they succeeded. And that sent everybody over the moon. Myself, the moment that I heard that Lincoln Riley was going to USC, I even tweeted Oklahoma head coach Brent Venables. I did not know any more than you would know that Venables would accept the job. And from the jump, the state of Oklahoma and its 3 million plus residents have embraced him. I've never seen the the Palace on the Prairie or Memorial Stadium with so many people attending a game for spring than I did this year because nobody has. It used to be about 57,000. That was tops for Oklahoma to draw for a spring game. It's a really good number for anybody, quite honestly. You had just over 60 for Georgia. You had just under 70 for Ohio State. You had over 50 for Nebraska, who shows up for their spring game, period. Alabama, I think, had something along the lines of 30. Oklahoma having 75,000 people show up to a spring game, to a glorified practice, is unprecedented. But that is how badly people want him to succeed and how on his side they are. He's also working with a group of people, and quite frankly, a fan base that he knows intimately well, something Lincoln Riley does not have at USC. Brent Venables is still revered, not just as a defensive coordinator, but as a linebackers coach that helped Oklahoma win its last national championship. And he has the same blessing that Bob Stoops gave to Lincoln Riley. That helps. That's a tremendous salve. He also was able to bring with him what I think is the most important position coach at Clemson in the last 10 years, and Todd Bates, coaching defensive line. Remember that 2018 defensive line that was destroying people at Clemson, right? That year that, Jimbo Fisher was waiting in line to see what Nick Saban was really hitting on. Yeah, all those dudes got drafted, and I think 3 of the 4, or all 4, ended up getting drafted in the first round, something ridiculous like that. I know the Christian Wilkins went, Dexter Lawrence went, Cleveland Farrell went. I'm not sure about Austin Bryant. I'm going to have to go check my math on that. But schedule breakdown goes like this. You're at Nebraska on September 17th. There's a lot of people that just don't know college football that don't expect that game to be competitive because they didn't watch last year's Oklahoma-Nebraska game where Nebraska was in that thing all the way late. So much so that that we saw what was the most remarkable interception I think any of us have ever seen from DJ Graham. And we had people saying he should have batted the ball down. That's how tight that game was, right? I am looking at that game and circling it going, okay, they got Casey Thompson over there. They've added Trey Palmer. They have what I think is the best JUCO running back, if not, transfer running back in the country nobody's talking about. And Scott Frost has his back against the wall. He has to win this year. I don't know that you want to roll into Lincoln if you're Oklahoma with a new head coach and court all of that in a game that you're supposed to win. But I 100% believe you can lose because you look like losing it last year and you won 10, 11 games. Okay. Next game on there, or I should say this triple threat of K-State at Texas Christian and then OU Texas all in a row. One of those games is likely to trip you up. It's one of those games always trips Oklahoma up. That's kind of the thing. If you don't lose to K-State, you lose Texas Christian. You don't lose Texas Christian, you lose K-State. And then OU Texas is a crapshoot. Like it's 4 overtimes, right? And it feels like it's going to go to overtime no matter who plays who and who plays where and what the quarterback is, who the head coach is. That's just what that game ends up being. So I'm not putting a whole lot on them running that gauntlet unscathed. They can. I just don't expect them to. And Texas Christian is not the Texas Christian that they've been used to, obviously, because we got Sonny Dykes as head coach and not Gary Patterson. But Gary Patterson is now an analyst, basically advising Steve Sarkisian. So you've transferred that Texas Christian energy to Texas. That doesn't make me feel good either as an Oklahoma fan. And then November 5th, you have Baylor. Dave Aranda has demonstrated that he had Lincoln Riley's number. Be interesting to see if he have Jeff Lebby's or, for that matter, Brent Venables. But they are the defending Big 12 champs and the defending Sugar Bowl champs, and they're really doggone good, especially now that they have a quarterback that I can trust in Blake Shapen. And that defense is going to be outstanding because that's what Dave Aranda does. He does defense like Lincoln Riley does offense. And then Bedlam is on November 19th. Yeah, that game. That's a revenge game for Oklahoma, but none of the dudes that lost that game are still here. Really? Like you talk about Caleb Williams, you're talking about perhaps a Mario Williams, right? And you're having some turnover on the defense. Mike Gundy's group, I think, could still be pretty good. It's all about, is Spencer Sanders going to develop into the kind of guy that doesn't turn the ball over? So you got to watch what I think is basically 6 games on a 12-game schedule. It's just a more difficult schedule than what USC has. Star players you got to know about for Oklahoma. Dylan Gabriel, obviously, right? Transferring in. We expect him to be the starter from day one. Marvin Mims, who is a player that Riley was getting dinged for not including more in his game planning. Because we all know that Marvin Mims is a monster. Throw him the ball. But more than that, give him more opportunities to just touch the ball. I think he's demonstrated that he is Oklahoma's number one and should be treated that way. And then on the defensive side, Jalen Redmond. That's the guy that Isaiah Thomas said on this show he expects to have a big game. Jalen had not really played football until he got to like high school. I want to say his junior year of high school. Still developing into what we expect to be an outstanding defensive tackle. And he's been battling injuries for his entire career. If he puts a healthy season together, I could easily see him being a first-round draft pick. That's how he's being talked about just 2 years ago. He's that good. Let that dude develop. Some recruits for you to know. Javante Barnes, who I think is more like a Marcellus Sutton comp for Oklahoma fans that know. He is muscular, fast enough. We'll see. I will see. You got Eric Gray there. You're okay. You're a okay running back, and you're certainly better off than you were in 2020. Kobe McKenzie at linebacker is a guy that I really expect to be great. There's a brilliant photo of Kobe McKenzie standing next to, I think, his comp, and Kenneth Murray Jr. And Kobe McKenzie is an 18-year-old kid, and Kenneth Murray is a first-round draft pick. Kobe McKenzie is bigger and taller than Kenneth Murray is as a teenager. When Kenneth Murray is just drafted in the first round by the Los Angeles Chargers. It's ridiculous. And this was a dude that was thinking about reclassifying for a little while to get to Oklahoma, coming out of Lubbock. It was a very big deal for Oklahoma to get him. I thought it was wild that Texas didn't go after him. I think he could be an outstanding defender, let alone player for Oklahoma. And then lastly, for me, is Gentry Williams, who is from Tulsa, went to Booker T. Washington High School. I thought that Gentry Williams could be racing in the next Olympics if he just stuck with running 400 meters. He's that fast. He's that good. He plays some corner for Oklahoma. It could be great. Maybe return some kicks, especially if they figure out what they've got in perhaps their secondary, but we'll see, right? Like, I'm not certain that the secondary is going to be as good as it could be, but that might be because Brent Venables and Ted Roof are still trying to install what they got, to say nothing of Billy Bowman actually sticking at one position as opposed to playing like 8. I hope that Brent Venables knows something I don't in sticking him at safety, because I look at Billy Bowman and I see a slot receiver. I see a DeMarco Murray type. I see a dude that can also line up 7.5 yards deep. He is dynamic with the ball in his hands. All right. So money question. Who will have a better year one? Riley or Venables? I'm going to push and say 10 games is the tops for both of these teams, with the most pivotal games being Utah and Texas, respectively. Utah being USC and Texas being Oklahoma. I think that USC has an easier route to get to 10 wins. I think Oklahoma has a more difficult route to get to 10 wins, but I also think that Oklahoma is a more talented football team and more cohesive football team at this point, simply because of the infrastructure. And I think it's one of the things that we don't count enough when we're talking about college football. It matters what people around the program think about the program. It matters how people talk about the program. It matters what parents say about the program. It matters what your governor says about the program. Not for nothing, but I'm not sure the governor of California even knows they got a program down there at USC. That's just me. I mean, Governor Newsom, you want to tell me that I'm wrong? Tell me that I'm wrong. I know for doggone sure that Kevin Stitt knows that we got basically one program in Oklahoma he got to worry about, and it plays in Norman. Right? Like, this is why Nebraska football was just a gargantuan juggernaut for so long. Right? It does matter that everybody's pulling in the same direction. So I'm going to go with 10 wins being the cap for both of them. Obviously, you could be better or worse than that, but I think that Oklahoma's probably going to drop one of those games that I mentioned, Kansas State, Texas Christian, or Texas. You got to circle Baylor and Oklahoma State. It's just tough. It's just tough, right? SC, if you get past Utah, you get past Fresno State, you don't get tripped up by Notre Dame or Stanford or Oregon State, you should be just fine. You get to dodge Oregon. Like, okay, right? And now that the Pac-12 has changed its policy for how it's going to put teams into the Pac-12 championship game, you could end up there not having to ever have to play Washington or Oregon, right? Anybody from that particularly saucy North Division. I say saucy in air quotes because, Pac-12 North has not been much to crow about here of late. Thanks for watching this video. And remember, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any other videos on the #1 ranked show YouTube channel.